Hi, this is Robert Rice, and basically, what I want to do is to respond to a lot of comments that were on Dennis Prager's Prager University about Nazism or National Socialism and communism. There's a lot of things that people just don't know, don't understand, or they have been told something that just isn't true. Years ago, I had a friend in high school back in the 1970s who, with her parents, had escaped Soviet Russia. Now, the stories they told would literally break your heart. Stalin had 20 million murdered, and millions were imprisoned in gulags in Siberia. The same could be said of Khrushchev, Brezhnev, and Andropov. But you probably, if you were my age, I'm 57, if you were my age and older, then you probably don't remember. Or if you are not old enough, born like say in the 1980s, then you're not old enough to know. Is that in communist, socialist, national socialist, and democratic socialist, it is only the government officials that live well. And it is only the government officials that eat the best foods. And this was true in Soviet Russia. The only other people that had any sort of privilege were the athletes who won Olympic gold medals, or the cosmonauts who circled the Earth. They got special privilege where other people did not have any. People in Soviet Russia, communist Russia, starved. There were long lines of people waiting for hours for just a few loaves of bread at the market. Farmers could not enjoy the fruit of their own labor. They could not eat what they grew, or they would be imprisoned. There were political officers everywhere in every town, city, and village. If you were reported, whether it was true or not, to have said or even intimated anything against the government or the Communist Party, you were sent to a gulag or a prison camp, or you were interred in a sanitarium, because the Communist Party believed that if you did not like the system, then you were insane. All the phone lines were tapped by the government, and walls had ears. The KGB and the police were constantly spying on its own citizens. The citizens walked with their heads down in utter defeat. And the only release of the oppression of communist socialism was vodka. The Russian people had become alcoholics. You could only read the Pravda newspaper or the state-run news magazines. You could only watch the TV and listen to the radio stations that played only what the government allowed you to hear and see. Millions died trying to escape the oppression of the government. Communist socialism, National Socialism, which is fascism and Nazism, and Democratic Socialism have one thing in common, and the key word is socialism. Socialism is what the New World Order is all about. Worldwide socialism, where the common people will be culled and the unelected officials will be large and in charge. They will live the good life, eating the best and the most nutritious foods, have the best health care and the best homes and privileges. The rest of the people who were not culled will live on the brink of starvation. This is to ensure their compliance, and will only live to serve their new masters. Globalism is the New World Order, which is worldwide communism. Vladimir Putin told Barack Obama when Barack Obama was elected in 2008 not to go down the path of socialism. Russia had just come out of that oppressive governmental scheme that lasted for 70 years. It imploded under its own weight. But Obama did not listen. Why? Because Obama is a communist. And the Democratic Party in the U.S. is a socialist party. They hate the Constitution because it does not allow for the government to be all-powerful. If Hillary Clinton would have won the election, Russia would have declared war on the U.S. because Hillary Clinton is a communist also. Vladimir Putin has been fighting against the New World Order, and that is why the socialist, globalist governments want Putin out. They want war with Putin, and they want Donald Trump out, because Donald Trump threw a sabot into their globalist machine. He sabotaged their designs for the destruction of America. Now, I don't agree with everything Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin says and does, but they are the only ones that are fighting global communism. And don't be fooled by Sharia law. Sharia law is just as oppressive. Sharia law is National Socialism wrapped up in religious robes. The same is true of liberation theology. Liberation theology is Communist socialism wrapped in Christian robes. Actually, Communist socialism, Nazism, or National Socialists, and Democratic Socialism are the same thing. There is no real difference except in the method of obtaining power. All three desire world domination. All three enslave and murder not only others, but their own as well. But more deaths have been recorded through communist socialism than National Socialism or Democratic Socialism. Partly because National Socialism only existed in 3 countries, Germany, Italy, and Japan, and it had a very short lifespan, having been destroyed in the Second World War. The other reason is Communist socialism has existed for 100 years. Germany, Italy, and Japan are directly responsible for 20 million deaths. Communist socialism is directly responsible for 1/4 of a billion deaths. Now, for those who were born in the 80s and later, know nothing about the history of socialism. They don't know about the horrors of socialism. Now, like I said, those who had escaped Soviet Russia, Communist China, Communist North Korea, Communist Vietnam, Communist Cuba, and Democratic Socialist Venezuela, every person that I have ever talked to that has escaped these countries has told me these things. The problem is the socialists have spun the rhetoric that it's not mentioned in schools of learning, or they deny any such things ever happened. Under Chairman Mao, 60 million were exterminated. He culled the herd. That's a lot of blood on the hands of the Chicoms. I have asked millennials if they ever heard of Tiananmen Square, where the pro-democracy student uprising happened. They have never heard about it. It seems that the barbaric and oppressive aspects of socialism have been removed from history. The millennials today who have embraced socialism, or the Antifa, and you can probably also include now the Black Lives Matter or any other anarchist, have no idea what they are doing. They have not been taught history, or they are in denial that if socialism were to come to America, that what happened in other countries wouldn't happen here. The Antifa groups are merely college students acting on emotional appeals and not on cognitive or critical thinking. Communist socialism, as well as National Socialism, or Nazism or fascism, use patsies to steamroll the so-called revolution. These patsies become the so-called army. And if successful, the patsies, Antifa and other groups, will be the first to be wiped out when the socialist government is in place. Now, why is this? Because the patsies will suddenly realize that what they were told would happen was a lie. And the new socialist government will have to get rid of them to stay in power. They kill off all the ones that put them in power. This is what socialism does. It doesn't matter what brand of socialism, communist socialism or National Socialism or Democratic Socialism. It's all the same thing. And it always has the same end result. And this is about Vietnam. Why is it that every Vietnamese person I have ever met here in the United States have said that they were desperate to leave Vietnam and did whatever it took to leave that country? My barber is Vietnamese. Some of my friends at work are Vietnamese. And I served in the U.S. Army with Vietnamese. So if someone tells you that Vietnam is very progressive and they have all these rights and everything, somebody is lying. It's either all of them who I know that did not know each other, or it's the person that's telling you everything's fine in Vietnam. The Vietnamese War is over. Yes, both sides committed atrocities against civilians who were not in the fight. The Viet Cong, or the guerrilla army, committed more atrocities than the U.S. military or the North Vietnamese army. That war was a stain on every country that was involved. Now, the United States got involved because of our treaty with France. This was originally a French-Vietnam War spurred on by the Chi-Coms. Once the United States got involved, the French left. The Tet Offensive was a failure, and all those that attacked were routed, captured, or destroyed within a week's time. The U.S. military had pushed the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong all the way back to Hanoi, where the fight could have ended in 1968. However, two things happened that caused it to linger on. The Viet Cong went into Cambodia and Laos, so we had to go and get them. This took resources and manpower away from the front, and the Democratic Party in the United States got involved. The politicians got involved, and they began to hamstring the military to where the United States military could not prosecute the fight. The lesson learned: if you want to win a war, then keep the politicians out of the war. Just like in Operation Iraqi Freedom. It could have been done and finished in 2 years. But the liberal politicians got involved, and it dragged out the conflict as it is still now ongoing. I am sure the worldwide military-industrial complex loves these prolonged conflicts. They create a war, and they get rich, and they get power, and everybody else gets harmed. I have befriended Vietnamese people that are still in Vietnam, and some of what they say is correct. They do have the internet, and a lot of them have Facebook. And the Vietnamese people can travel to Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. But they have to be careful as to where they go and what they say and what they do. The Vietnamese government has evolved kind of away from what it was since the fall of Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City. At first, they were very brutal and purged and killed and imprisoned South Vietnamese leaders, other businessmen and women, religious leaders, and the such. They confiscated all assets, bank accounts, and property, and they placed in all of the village garrisons and political officers to establish full compliance with the new order. But over time, this overhanded control was demoralizing, and it was demoralizing the people and was hurting the economy. The Vietnamese government had to change. They relaxed a little bit and let the people breathe a little. They began to allow to have some private ownership of business and to be able at least to enjoy some of the fruits of their labor. But, like the Chinese, the government maintains the right to clamp down whenever it so wishes. So what is democratic socialism? Well, National Socialism and Communist Socialism are generally brought about by direct takeover. And it's usually by a revolution. In Nazi Germany, it was the Nazi Revolution. In Soviet Russia and Communist Chinese, it was a revolution to take over the government. In democratic socialism, it is socialists who are getting involved in politics, and they start to pass laws little by little, not direct socialist laws, but little laws that gear toward socialism. Because if they were to just pass direct socialist communist laws, then it'd be like trying to throw a frog into a boiling pot of water. That frog's going to jump out. So what they do is they turn up the heat a little bit at a time, and you don't notice the change until it's too late. Democratic socialists, such as Bernie Sanders, go about and seek to pass laws to make it harder and harder and harder to be free. For example, hate speech. If you are to say anything against, let's say, Islam, then that can be declared hate speech. However, on that same foot, for a Muslim to say anything against Christianity should also be declared hate speech. If being a conservative causes such ire and causes such disdain and violent protest because conservative speech is claimed as hate speech, then the opposite is true. Because what the Antifa and the socialists and the anarchists and everything are trying to do is hate speech against a conservative. So the hypocrisy lives on. In a true republic, every person has a voice. Every person has a right. They have a right to their thoughts. They have a right to their speech. They have a right to how to live their life. A true good government gives the people liberty and freedom and allows them to be self-determinating. In other words, it is not the job of the government to feed the people. It is the job of the people to feed themselves. It is not the job of the government to clothe the people or to give a person a house or to give a person a cell phone or to give a person a car or to give a person a job. It is a free, liberated people who are self-determinate to make for themselves what they wish. If they want a job, they get a job. If they don't want a job, well, guess what? You suffer for it. If you want to be lazy and think you can live off the government in a self-determining society, you're out of luck. There are no handouts. In a true self-determining society, if you want a house, you go work for the money and you buy the house. Same with a car. Same with property. And speaking of property, we've kind of gotten away from the right of property in this country, because now if a person wants to buy a land with a house on it, or buy land and build a house on it, he should be entitled to all rights of that property and all things that are built on that property and all things that are under that property that he has bought. But today in the United States, a person really never owns property, because now he has to pay taxes on that property. So he's no longer owning the property, he's renting the property. And if he doesn't pay the taxes on that property, he gets removed from that property. And the governmental authority, whether it's city, county, municipal, state, or federal, they then own the property. So what we need to do is to get back to the right of property. But anyway, that's my political rant. I don't really talk a lot about politics, but, this is important. Socialism never works. It never has worked. And all it does is oppress and take away your desire to improve your own self. Because if you work hard for the money you get, they take the money you get and they give it to somebody else who doesn't work at all. So why work? Why try to improve your own self and your own condition if you can't do it because somebody else is taking away your money to give to somebody else who just doesn't want to work? Now, there are people who cannot work for whatever reason. There could be viable medical reasons or viable mental reasons as to why they cannot work. But that is very few, and that is less than 0.001% of the actual population. So the actual number of workable people is astounding compared to those who cannot work for whatever reason. There is a lot of fraud in claiming a disability, so people said, I just don't want to work anymore, and I'm going to let the government take care of me. It's not the job of the government to take care of you. It's the job of yourself to take care of yourself and your family. That's called self-determination. That's called responsibility. So get your responsibility together. Be self-determinant. Improve yourself. There's always room for improvement. And you can do it. If you're in poverty, if you're watching this and you're on government programs and health care and blah, 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 well, you know what? Get off of it. Because now you are slave to the government. And now they can tell you, hey, if you want to keep your money, you're going to have to do this. And it may not be a good thing which you have to do. Thank you.